Welcome to the chapter, 13, Flipped Classroom, which is about China. And this chapter will be wrapped into a larger mini unit on the Indian Ocean Basin. So here we're going to exclusively focus on China and China's political structure and some of the innovations they were able to create with that structure, and then we'll move into the Indian Ocean Basin as a whole. So this era of China, or this in this era, period 3, China sees three early dynasties, the Sui, the Tang, and the Song. And then there's a break for the Yuan dynasty, which is a Mongol dynasty, and then they also start the Ming. So there are a lot of dynasties during this time period, and we're going to focus on these three today. This is a spring outing of the Tang court, this picture. As you can see, there's this, they're using these saddles, they have stirrups. These are some of the innovations we saw from earlier, last period. And they're wearing these amazing silks. We're going to see that continue to be still important in China. And the Tang Dynasty was the largest, I'd say, from this era. So, what happens in China before the Mongols arrive? Well, China is extremely decentralized after the Han fall. They fall in 220 CE, and for over 350 years until the Sui dynasty in 1589, which begins in 589 CE, China continues to have a decentralized government. So they have a really difficult time with recovery. They enter another what you could call warring states period. But immediately after the Sui, you can see the Tong, and then immediately after the Tong, or very soon after the Tong, the Song come into power. And this fluid movement of power really allows China to maintain a booming economy with improved agricultural production and technological innovations, which means that trade outside of China and within China, but really dominantly outside of China, really grows. And there's a high increase in the desire for luxury goods. That's what's funding most of that trade. And a luxury good would be something similar to silk or porcelain. Probably the most important import from this time period is Buddhism. Buddhism had a good and bad relationship with tradition in China, especially early on in the Tang court. They did not like Buddhism because they were Confucius and saw that as the way to order the world. They still maintained their beliefs in Taoism, the mandate of heaven, and ancestor worship. So Buddhism was added in with all of these, and Buddhism and Confucianism combined to create a new scholarly, traditions of Neo-Confucianism. This is not a hard line. Today we distinguish between Confucianism and Neo-Confucianism, but if you lived in China at this time, you really wouldn't. Also, China continued as this huge, powerful country to have a lot of influence in other countries around it, particularly Korea, Vietnam, and Japan. Influences included religion, like Buddhism, and philosophies like Confucianism, writing, political relationships, including tributes. They were really under the shadow of China during this time period, especially during the Tang. You can see this here with the Japanese embassy sending boats to the Tang court. Okay, so moving into the separate dynasties, which is going to be the main focus of this PowerPoint. The Sui dynasty was started by Yang Jian, and it was extremely centralized with a heavy focus on military. It was kind of like the Qin coming in after that huge warring states period. They had to maintain a strong military. But their key cornerstone of their administration was to have this really strong focus on public works. So the biggest public work that they did, which we'll see in the next slide, and the most important thing, the thing that unites China for a millennium, 1,000 years, they rely on this Sui created thing, is the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal was 1,200 miles, and it connected the north and the south, the Huanghe and the Yangtze rivers, as well as the cities of Hangzhou, Xi'an, and Beijing. So really, it was connecting the agricultural south with the both at times war-torn, but very important for trade, um, north. And that's 1,200 miles again. The Sui dynasty, another similarity to the Qin, but the Sui dynasty also does not last very long at all. I mean, you can see it lasts barely, or like right around 30 years. This was because in order to fund all of these public works projects like the Grand Canal, which was hugely influential, there was very high taxes. And as we know throughout history, high taxes don't make people very happy. Also, there was a labor tax. So in order to create these great public works projects, each man had to give an amount of time, which is a labor tax. So this system, like the Mita we're going to learn about in South America, also made people pretty unhappy. So we're going to stop there with the Sui, and in the second half of the video, we'll get into the remaining two dynasties. But before we see them, I just want to show you the Grand Canal. So here's the Grand Canal today. Here's the Grand Canal, an illustration of it. So you can see the locks and the dams. And I mean, it's a very, very, very complicated system. And it shows amazing, amazing ingenuity. So, and then we see Hangzhou and Beijing all the way up north. Again, agricultural south. Trade, invasions, needing to feed these soldiers in the north. So we'll stop there and move on to the next dynasties in the next part.